رتبہ علی اکبر کا اس بات سے ظاہر ہے اس بات سے ظاہر ہے رتبہ علی اکبر کا کہ ہوتا ہے اذانوں میں چرچا علی اکبر کا اس بات سے ظاہر ہے رتبہ علی اکبر کا اس ماں کا مقدر بھی کیا خوب مقدر ہے اس ماں کا مقدر بھی کیا خوب مقدر ہے کہ جس ماں کو بھی مل جائے صدقہ علی اکبر کا کہ جس ماں کو بھی مل جائے صدقہ علی اکبر کا اور شعر پہ ذرا توجہ فرمائیے گا اے حر تیری قسمت کا کیا چمکا ستارہ ہے اے حر تیری قسمت کا کیا چمکا ستارہ ہے کیا صبح کو دیکھا تھا چہرہ علی اکبر کا کیا صبح کو دیکھا تھا چہرہ علی اکبر کا پوچھا گیا یوسف سے جب حسن کے بارے میں پوچھا گیا یوسف سے جب حسن کے بارے میں کہنے لگے یہ تو ہے صدقہ علی اکبر کا کہنے لگے یہ تو ہے صدقہ اکبر کا شابیر جلاتے تھے عباس کے جھولے کو شابیر جلاتے تھے عباس کے جھولے کو اور عباس جھلاتے ہیں جھولا علی اکبر کا عباس جھلاتے ہیں جھولا علی اکبر کا یہ رتبہ اکبر ہے حیدر کے گھرانے میں یہ رتبہ اکبر ہے حیدر کے گھرانے میں کہ آغوش ہے زینب کی جھولا علی اکبر کا کہ آغوش ہے زینب کی جھولا علی اکبر کا اور آخری شعر پیش خدمت ہے حضرت عباس کو اور شہزادہ علی اکبر کو اجازت نہیں ملی جنگ کی اگر اجازت ملتی تو کیا ہوتا غرض نبغہ ملتا تو کفار کا یہ لشکر غرض نبغہ ملتا تو کفار کا یہ لشکر عباس کا آدھا تھا آدھا علی اکبر کا عباس کا آدھا تھا آدھا علی اکبر کا اس بات سے ظاہر ہے رتبہ علی اکبر کا کہ ہوتا ہے اذانوں میں چرچا علی اکبر کا پر محمد والے محمد بلند صلوات. Thank you.
میں فضل نقوی سے درخواست کروں گا کہ وہ تشریف لائیں اور نذرانۂ عقیدت پیش کریں.
Assalamu alaikum. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for our dear brother Akamat Abbas, who has recently passed away. And I'd like also to, from all of our behalves, to congratulate the Imam of our time on the birth of Hazrat Ali Akbar alayhi salam. روبائی پیش ہے. عرش سے فرش پا ہر رخ سے کمال آتا ہے عرش سے فرش پا ہر رخ سے کمال آتا ہے گھر میں شبیر کے شبیر کا لال آتا ہے گھر میں شبیر کے شبیر کا لال آتا ہے فرش پر بن کے محمد کی مثال آتا ہے فرش پر بن کے محمد کی مثال آتا ہے اس کی خلقت کا جو سوچو تو خیال آتا ہے اس کی خلقت کا جو سوچو تو خیال آتا ہے اس کی خلقت کا جو سوچو تو خیال آتا ہے. اور بیت پیش ہے. سامنے پہلے محمد کو بٹھایا ہوگا سامنے پہلے محمد کو بٹھایا ہوگا پھر خدا نے علی اکبر کو بنایا ہوگا پھر خدا نے علی اکبر کو بنایا ہوگا. اور چند اشعار پیش ہیں. حسن یوسف قائل حسن پیمبر جب ہوا حسن یوسف قائل حسن پیمبر جب ہوا کلمہ حسن علی اکبر بھی پڑھوایا گیا کلمہ حسن علی اکبر بھی پڑھوایا گیا. ایک شبیہ مصطفیٰ ہے اور ایک شبیہ فاطمہ ایک شبیہ مصطفیٰ ہے اور ایک شبیہ فاطمہ مرتبہ اکبر کا اور صغرا کا بتلایا گیا مرتبہ اکبر کا اور صغرا کا بتلایا گیا. دل بہت ہی شاد ہے اب شاہ کی ہمشیر کا دل بہت ہی شاد ہے اب شاہ کی ہمشیر کا جشن ہے 1400 سالہ دل برے شبیر کا جشن ہے 1400 سالہ دل برے شبیر کا. ہر کو راہ حق پا لے آئی ہے اکبر کی اذاں ہر کو راہ حق پا لے آئی ہے اکبر کی اذاں یہ تو ادنا معجزہ تھا نعرہ تکبیر کا یہ تو ادنا معجزہ تھا نعرہ تکبیر کا. اور آخری شعر پیش ہے. ایک نہ ایک دن دیکھنا آ کر سنائیں گے ضرور ایک نہ ایک دن دیکھنا آ کر سنائیں گے ضرور یوسف زہرا قصیدہ یوسف شبیر کا یوسف زہرا قصیدہ یوسف شبیر کا. صلوات.
I will request Hujjatul Islam Maulana Sheikh Hamza Sahib al-Qibla to address the Milad.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا سيد الخلق أجمعين حبيبنا حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening and the return of our Imam, let's recite the salawat. We congratulate all the brothers and sisters on the occasion of the birth of the older son of Imam al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi, the warrior in Karbala, Ali Akbar salamullahi alayhi. And also the births of Bibi Zainab salamullahi alayha, Imam al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas salamullahi alayhi, and Imam Zain al-Abidin salamullah alayhi, and coming in a few days the birth of Imam al-Hujjah ajjalallah ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. It is interesting how the month of Sha'ban, according to these accounts, has the main figures of Karbala all born in this month. Bibi Zainab at the beginning of the month, then Imam al-Hussein and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and Imam Zain al-Abidin toward the beginning, and then now we have Ali al-Akbar. And it's also interesting that Karbala and the events of Karbala and these figures who were involved in it are also a main part of the events that will take place with the coming of our Imam, as the slogan of the Imam of our time has been said to be Ya Latharat al-Hussein. And that means that the birth of Imam al-Hujjah is also related to the matters of Karbala and Imam al-Hussein and what happened there. So what I'd like to mention in the time, during the time that we have, is not going to be particular to Ali al-Akbar. I want to look at this, the movement of Imam al-Hussein and Karbala and Imam al-Hujjah, and use the context of the birth of this great man, this great son of Imam al-Hussein, the one whose chivalry in Karbala is one of the unique expressions of faith, chivalry, and loyalty to Imam al-Hussein. I want to use that to talk about something that's related to their movement, which is alive. I'll preface it with the following. the importance of understanding that movement in the way that I want to discuss. The importance of it from the perspective of our love and affection toward the warriors of Karbala, toward Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar, who went to the battlefield in the way you and I have heard, and was martyred the way we all know, his blood did not go in vain. His efforts did not go in vain. It's not the end of Ali Akbar, the battlefield of Karbala. That's the end of his physical presence on earth in the way that you and I see. Of course, then being transferred to the noble grave that we have, the Dharih of Imam al-Hussein, that has the shape it has due to there being Ali al-Asghar and Ali al-Akbar buried along with Imam al-Hussein in the same grave. That's why it has that particular shape. It's different than the Dharihs of the other Imams. That wasn't the end of Ali al-Akbar. It was the end of the enemies of Ali al-Akbar, but it was not the end of Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar, in his efforts, along with the other Shuhada of Karbala, particularly the Imam of the Shuhada of Karbala and Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Hussein salamullahi alayh, their movement, their efforts in Karbala did not die there. That was not something, let me put it in these words, the revival of Islam, we all know, Imam al-Hussein was asked, why are you going? He said, I'm not going to create corruption, I'm going to revive the religion of my grandfather. It was not going to be revived with the death in the sense of the end of the life of Imam al-Hussein. It was going to be revived by the Shahada of Imam al-Hussein and the Shuhada of Karbala, which, as the Quran says, is the beginning of a greater form of life. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. There's a hayat, there's a life that a shaheed begins after their shahada that is more effective than their life here on this planet in the material way that you and I are familiar with and live our lives. And I want to look at this movement in that way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes sure that the events in Karbala, the efforts of the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet in Karbala, they are able to reach their desired goal. And the desired goal is to bring the world toward Islam. The same goal of the Risala of the Prophet. Imam al-Hussein salamullah alayh is an important figure, as all of the Imams are, but a certain sacrifice is made by Imam al-Hussein and those who accompanied him, including Ali al-Akbar. What's the goal? The goal is Islam on a global scale, Islam to be accepted on a global scale. I want to look at the events in Karbala and these figures that we celebrate their births in this light. Recite a salawat, please. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran 3 times the following message. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. This part is repeated verbatim 3 times. He is the one who sent his missionary. That's a better translation of Rasul than messenger. A missionary is someone who is sent with a mission. Rasulullah was not someone, a messenger that was sent with a message to deliver. He was a missionary. He was given a mission to deliver on that mission. The mission was, it's stated in this verse. What's the mission? وَالَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ. He sent that missionary with guidance and the religion of truth, لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ, in order that God, through the efforts of that prophet, those who follow him, first and foremost, his family, the Ahlul Bayt, through their efforts, Allah will make this prevail over all other ideologies over the course of time. Islam, which means submission to Allah, willingly people submitting to Allah, obeying Him because they believe He is to be obeyed. This is what Islam means. Islam doesn't mean a title, we're a Muslim, oh, I accept this religion, it's called Islam. Islam has a meaning. The meaning of Islam is submission. The submission that is mentioned, the Quran says, there's another verse that God talks about Islam, and that verse doesn't mention it in a positive sense. It says, the A'rab said, Amanna, we believe. God told the Prophet to tell the A'rab are not Arabs. A'rab is not the plural of Arab. Okay. It means the Bedouin Arabs, the desert-dwelling Arabs. And it's not being racist here. It's just stating a fact of the Bedouin Arabs of the time. They were أَشَدُّ كُفْرًا وَنِفَاقًا, the verses of the Quran say. When they finally came to a point where they came forward, or as we will see, the verse says, they surrendered to the Prophet because the conditions did not allow them to behave otherwise. When they finally did so, they came to the Prophet and said, Amanna, we believe. The verse was revealed. Tell them, say, Aslamna, we became, if we were to translate that using the words that we're familiar with, we became Muslim. وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. But faith has actually not entered your hearts. That's different Islam. That's surrendering to the Prophet. That's surrendering to the Prophet when you don't have any other choice, and therefore there's no belief in that. There's no faith that accompanies that. They didn't surrender to the Prophet because they believed he's Rasulullah. They surrendered to the Prophet because the Prophet had might. The Prophet had military might. Now the Prophet has grown strong. He's got an army that anyone who sees that army would be afraid. They came and said, oh, we believe. Allah said, no, you don't believe. It's okay though. Say we surrender to the Prophet. The Islam that is positive, the Islam that is praised, the Islam that the Prophet of Allah, Ibrahim, wished to develop when he asked, along with his son Ismail, the great-grandfather of the Holy Prophet, after completing the reconstruction of the Kaaba, he wished for and asked God, رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا وَاجْعَلْنَا مُسْلِمَيْنِ لَكَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِنَا أُمَّةً مُسْلِمَةً. O Allah, accept from us and make us two Muslim, not two people that carry the title of Islam. They could have called themselves Muslim right there and then. Make us of those who submit completely, fully, entirely. This is the Islam that Ibrahim wishes. This comes along with faith and love and want to be someone who surrenders to God or submits to God on that level. It can't be something that's forced. La ikraha fi din. Deen generally, religion generally, is just not something that can be forced. Your views of the world are your views of the world. You can't be forced to have any view of the world. You're going to have the view of the world that you choose to have. But the one that is praised, that if you know what it is, you would love to have, is Islam. This is the goal. The goal is the people of the world recognize it for what it is, and they desire, they wish, they want to submit to Allah. And God says He sent that missionary in order for that to happen. He sent that missionary, that Rasulullah, in order for that to happen. He's the first that's going to carry that burden. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Then it's Amir al-Mu'mineen, then Imam al-Mujtaba, then it's Imam al-Hussein that carries that burden. And the rest of the Imams up to the Imam of our time, who's been carrying it for over 1,000 years. And he will continue until God gives him the signal that now you need to reveal your identity. People need to know you by face, and they need to more actively come toward you. That movement is going to reach its final destination. Recite salawat, please. So, the mission of the Prophet was to bring this religion that can be summarized in this word, Islam, submission to Allah. We gave a very brief description of what this means. Submission doesn't have a negative connotation to it. Submission is not about what we mean of it. Submission is not surrendering by force. Submission that is spoken highly of and is referred to as Islam is not, oh, you have to do this. It's about a believer believing in Allah on a level, to a degree, that they want to surrender and submit. Let me give you an example of what that means. Ibrahim was commanded by Allah and Ismail, the same two who made that dua and made that wish that they want to be Muslims. God said to Ibrahim, you need to kill your son, Ismail. If you believe and you want to submit to him, you want. Ibrahim did not have any force forcing him to go and try to take the life of Ismail, who was based on worldly standards, his son that God had given him later in his life, and his son had been raised without him, without Ibrahim. Ibrahim was not part of the life of Ismail when Ismail grew up. Ismail grew up in Mecca, Ibrahim was in Palestine. He only had a couple of visits when Ismail was very, very young. Imagine how much love, fatherly love, has developed and grown in Ibrahim. And then finally, when he comes and spends some time with Ismail, it's to reconstruct the Kaaba. You get to know your son a little more. That love grows even further. You see what great person he is, what great qualities he has, and that increases your love toward him. Together you make this dua, وَجْعَلْنَا مُسْلِمَيْنِ لَكَ. God says, okay, take the life of your son. And nobody's forcing Ibrahim. Ibrahim went forward with it because the way he understood Allah, the way he understood God in relation to himself and to Ismail, he said, by all means, I'm willing to do this. I want to do this. Not because I love killing people, especially my own son. That's not the point. Ibrahim didn't like killing people. He's not bloodthirsty. He loved to obey and submit to Allah, whatever God says. Even if that is to slaughter his own son. And he took the knife. وَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا, the verse says, this is when it actually happened. لَمَّا أَسْلَمَا, their dua came true. God helped them. They submitted wantingly, lovingly. وَتَلَّهُ لِلْجَبِينِ, his head was brought down to begin the process. Allah said, نَادَيْنَاهُ أَن يَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ, we called upon him, O Ibrahim, قَدْ صَدَّقْتَ الرُّؤْيَا, you completed your task, you did what you were supposed to. Submission to Allah, stemming from an understanding of God that pulls you, that draws you, strong feeling of love toward Him, that even if that were the command, you would do it. Imam al-Hussein, in relation to Ali al-Akbar, took that last step as well. Imam al-Hussein sent Ali al-Akbar as the first of his family members. And when he went to the battlefield, Imam al-Hussein watched. And Allah made it happen that after the brutality against Ali al-Akbar in the battlefield, that Imam al-Hussein went there and saw the body of Ali al-Akbar. Was there any force in that? Did Imam al-Hussein feel bad for doing that? Or did Imam al-Hussein submit to Allah on that level with love? It's the latter, it's the second. He wanted that. Not because he loves seeing blood, al-ayadu billah. Don't misunderstand. Or especially that it's his son who he liked. No, he's got a lot of love. And of course, with that love of Allah and the love to submit to Him, then Allah shows that I'm not here to hurt you. On the night of Ashura, one of the facts that we know, you've probably heard, it's written in books. I don't know how much we focus on it, how much we spend time analyzing it. Imam al-Hussein put his ashab through a test. He said, I'm turning off the lights. You all have the night. They all want me. You go and recite a salawat, please. Take advantage of the darkness of the night. Leave me. Take my family as well, some accounts say. And they stayed. The ones who stayed, stayed. After they did that, Imam al-Hussein showed them, it says. Imam al-Hussein showed them their place in paradise. They saw, they knew what seems to the eyes of a person who's limited by these material eyes. They're seeing Ali al-Akbar in blood. Ali al-Akbar is seeing himself. Imam al-Hussein is seeing him on a different realm, in a different level, in a life that is much more desirable in every way, from the entirety of the life and all the blessings and all the great feelings and all the great pleasures of life here. It's not bad. It wasn't hurtful. Yeah, there's a physical pain to a certain degree. We don't know. We didn't go through that. To our eyes, it's very painful. What the enemies did is very bad. But for the person who is submitting and surrendering to Allah, it's not bad. Ali Akbar is entering a realm. The announcement he made, "Oh Father, my grandfather Rasulullah is here with water." He's receiving, he's seeing it before he departs this world. It's just in the event of Karbala, in the setting that's there, and his physical body is not capable of describing anymore, his body is disconnecting from him, and he is not able to relate that more to us. But what's happening is his life of joy and pleasure has already begun. This is a submission to Allah. I wanted to talk about this a little bit in order that we understand for ourselves. We're considered Muslims. We call ourselves Muslims. Let's not forget, we have not reached the goal of Islam for ourselves, let alone for the community, let alone for the world. The goal of Islam is what Ibrahim wished for. The goal of Islam is all of us move in a direction that we would want to be Muslimin the way Ibrahim wanted to be a Muslim. The way Imam al-Hussein was Muslim. It's very far. It's very difficult to get there, but it's something we need to move toward. The mission of the Prophet was not for himself to reach that. He was already a Muslim in that sense. If Ibrahim toward the end of his life reached that, the Prophet was that from the beginning. Imam al-Hussein was that from the beginning. Imam al-Mujtaba was that from the beginning. Imam Zayn al-Abidin was that from the beginning. Bibi Fatima salamullahi alayha was that from the beginning. These are extraordinary human beings. While they are human beings, they are born Muslim in that sense of the word. Okay. Their efforts were to bring the rest of the world toward Islam. That's why they are a'imma, they lead. They are ahead of everyone else. They know the direction. They are pulling everyone else in that direction for mankind to reach that. When will mankind reach that where collectively the community of people on earth collectively will be surrendering and submitting willingly with love to Allah? With the coming of the Imam of our time, that's going to happen. It's all been laid out, and we have been told that. I don't know if we've put all of this information together and we are able to get this. That's the goal, and this is when it's going to happen. And here we are, brothers and sisters. We are part of this journey as individuals. As individuals, we are to be affected by Karbala, by the movement of the Prophet, by the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein. We are to be moved. And to a certain degree we are. My emphasis here is that we should realize what our personal goal is. Keep an eye on, I expressed my condolences to the family who lost a young one. It's difficult to lose a young member of the family in the way that sometimes they are lost. It's very difficult to see that. I express my condolences. I want to use that as a reminder too. We don't know when our time will come. It could be the next minute. I don't know if I'm going to walk down this mimbar alive. How would I know? How would I know? How would anyone know? We should know. We have a limited time and we don't know when that limit is. And this is the time we have to work actively toward reaching that goal, that Islam, that submission to Allah. Take advantage of Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein is Safinatun Najat. Safinatun Najat. While we should be proud of being the follower of an Imam who's titled that, we should take advantage of what that means. That means you should realize that I myself am struggling. I'm going to be drowning. Ya Aba Abdullah, you need to take my hand. Imam al-Hussein can take by the right of his Ali al-Akbar, can take us in that direction. But also, collectively, we're moving in a direction that submission on a mass scale, where the globe, the whole world, all people, from the North Pole to the South Pole, from the East to the West, from Hawaii to Hawaii, if you do a round trip, the whole thing, all people. In China, in Africa, in North Europe, Nordic countries, in Central America, South America. Understand the magnitude of it. The whole world is going to be calling Ya la Tharat al-Hussein, is going to be calling the names of the Ahlul Bayt, is going to be wanting to use their example to submit to Allah willingly, lovingly, wantingly. Ali al-Akbar, whom we are celebrating the birth of, was someone that saw part of his submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is this process of joining his father, going to Karbala, becoming a shaheed, in order for the rest of the people to come to submit to Allah. Recite salawat, please. So recite 3 salawats and people move forward, please. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad ajil faraj. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad ajil farajahum. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad ajil farajahum. Ali al-Akbar saw that part of his personal submission to Allah is to join this activity, this movement with his father Imam al-Hussein, to go to Karbala, understanding what will be the outcome. The outcome will be setting the foundation for all people surrendering and submitting to Allah willingly and lovingly. He saw that. He realized that. He joined his father Abu Abdullah al-Hussein in that movement with understanding. One of the things that we hear, one of the accounts that we have about Ali al-Akbar in Karbala, it's on the way to Karbala. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you've heard. Probably all of you have heard. It says on the way to Karbala, Imam al-Hussein had a dream. This is after they left Mecca. They're leaving toward Karbala, or they're leaving actually toward Kufa. Eventually, you know the story. Hur ibn Yazid comes and says you can't go toward Kufa. They change course, they end up in Karbala. While they're moving toward Kufa, in one of the stops, Imam al-Hussein has a dream. And in the dream, he sees something that after he wakes up, he explains, he says, I saw death coming toward us. Death is moving toward us. Says Ali al-Akbar asked a question. He was there, he heard. Ali al-Akbar said, Father, awalasna ala al-haq? Are we not on the path of truth? Are we not on haq? He said, yes. Then he said, then so be it. Okay. He said, then so be it. Ali al-Akbar did not just tag along. It wasn't an emotional decision, oh, this is my father, I need to be with him. No, Ali al-Akbar sees death is coming. All the signs are there, and then his father tells him, I saw the signs, death is approaching us. His question is this, and he says to his father, أَوَلَسْنَا عَلَى الْحَقِّ? Are Are we not on the path of truth? We're not doing the right thing, are we not? He says, yes, then so be it. Let us die on the path of haqq. Let our lives be taken on the path of haqq. This is a decision made by Ali Akbar to be part of that process. Him personally submitting to Allah, giving what he has, this body, this life, this material life of his. But in what context? For what purpose? In the context of Karbala, setting the stepping stones, the foundations for the whole globe to come to this submission. Okay? And we are people that have come over 1,000 years after that incident. During the time of the occultation of an imam who was working toward bringing people to that goal. We have been impacted and we have moved toward that submission to the degree that we have because of them. All of us owe our submission to Allah, whatever amount that we have, to Imam al-Hussein, to Sayyida Zainab, to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, to Imam Zain al-Abidin, to Ali al-Akbar. All of us. But is it enough to praise them for what they did? Is it enough to be proud of knowing such figures and speaking of such figures and crying for such figures and feeling happy on the day of their birth? Is it enough? Those are things we need to do. Is it enough? Or when you look at what they did, what their objective was, and you admire them for that, you begin to start wanting to be part of that. Isn't it such that when you read, I think all of us here are familiar with Ziyarat Warith, Thursday nights, at least every now and then we go to the center, and in other occasions we hear that. When we get to the Shuhada, we have this line, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum fanafuza ma'akum fawzan azima. We wish we were with you. We wish we were with you. We wish we accompanied you. That wish is not going to come true ever in the sense of us going back in time. But if we pay attention to what that means and what their goal is, you realize you have an opportunity right now to join that mission. All of us do. If this movement has continued, it didn't die there. Imam Zain al-Abidin started in Karbala, continuing it, keeping that memory alive, to keep the movement alive, and it's remained alive up to today. We search to find even the births of the members of the family of Imam al-Hussein present in Karbala, so we can celebrate that all of this is keeping the memory of Karbala and Imam al-Hussein and what they did alive. Their movement is alive. Their movement didn't end, the movement continued, and it will reach its final destination when the Imam of our time will call out, Ya Latharat al-Hussein. During this time, we still have a little bit of time here. Who wants to join? Who wants to submit to Allah on their personal level? And then realize that in order to submit to Allah, I need to be part of bringing others to submit to Allah, the same way that Imam al-Hussein and Ali Akbar were. That's what they did. They were already submitting to Allah. Going to Karbala, was for getting others to submit to Allah. That was part of their submission to Allah. We realize if you want to submit to Allah, you have to work on bringing others. Rishad Salawat, please. I want to ask Ali Akbar on this night, and I hope we all want to ask him to help us. Help us in understanding the way he did. Understanding, he understood what he is engaging in. He wasn't like the others who were asleep. You know, a lot of people, you know that. The people that knew of Imam al-Hussein, leave others alone, leave others aside. Those who knew Hussein, there were a lot of people that didn't come. In fact, the majority didn't come. They chose not to come. The few that were in Medina that knew him, actually a lot of people knew him, but they just didn't agree with him. But the ones that supposedly agreed with him, from his siblings and others, they chose not to come. In Kufa, 18,000 people initially pledged allegiance. In Kufa, 12,000 people, according to that account, wrote letters for the Imam to come. They knew of Imam al-Hussein. They wanted him. They liked him. But then eventually there came a time that they decided they don't want this. They chose not to. Because they didn't understand the importance of it. They weren't like horrific monsters. Shimr was, yes. The ones who didn't come, they thought it was a good idea, but then when they saw the consequences, they didn't think it was important enough for themselves to get killed. That's a problem. When it comes to sacrifices, one of the ways we justify for ourselves is that it's not really that important. Imam al-Hussein says it is. Ali Akbar understood when he needs to be part of such a movement. We ask him to help us develop that understanding. I can't overemphasize this. Today there are people who understand their taklif in this regard. They stand for their taklif. And there's others that, again, they like that direction. They love that direction. They love the Ahlul Bayt. But they don't understand the mission of the Ahlul Bayt. They don't understand the mission of the Ahlul Bayt today. They don't understand the Hussein of today. Okay. And therefore, they don't join the Hussein of today, especially when there are sacrifices that are required. We ask Ali Akbar to first give us that understanding so that we join the mission of the Hussein of our time. And then that we ask him to give us the courage. Courage is an important thing, brothers, sisters. Sometimes understanding is there. You understand what you need to do. You don't have the courage to do it. I don't know if you've been in that situation, that you feel that fear kicking in. You know what you got to do, but you see what that's going to result in. You see the consequences. Are you going to do it or not? Do you have the courage to do it? If it's saying something, do you have the courage to say? I always say this in regard to Karbala. It's something that always, when I think of it to the very limited degree that I can process this, very limited feel for what it is, I try to picture it in my mind. Picture 34,000 people. And you're one person standing before them and you're moving toward them. What type of courage is required for you to proudly step forward, bravely step forward, not as a weak person that's moving like, okay, kill me, I'm ready for this. No. Ali Akbar walks into the battlefield chanting his slogans, introducing himself with pride, walking toward these 30,000+ people. That's level of courage that I don't know. I don't know where else you can see that. We ask him to give us that after we get the understanding of what the mission is, that we get the courage to do what we're supposed to do when we have to do it. That's really difficult. And then understand this, brothers and sisters, when we know what we need to do and then we decide not to because we don't have the guts, and the understanding is gradually taken away as well. We stop thinking the same way. That's a danger. That's a serious danger. Start drifting away, and God says, okay, you wanted to close your eyes, now I'll close your eyes for good. You're not going to see this again. Never go against what you know to be right. Do it. Do what you know is right. Between you and Allah, you know something is right, do it. If you don't, there's a danger there. One of the things that I hope we have come to all a collective understanding regarding what has been said, this mission that they were part of, they did their share, now we are here, we want to join this movement, and so on and so forth. And I'm not describing the details of what exactly needs to be done. That's for other sessions, and I'm sure some of you have heard some things. But one of the things about this mission is for those who want to be part of it to spend time figuring out what they need to do. But one of the things that is necessary for us to take from Karbala and from Ali Akbar, and we want to ask him on this night to give us, is that love of Allah. We can't describe what they did and neglect this element. The underlying element that gave the courage to stand in the way, the strength to keep fighting despite being thirsty, and despite the pain not of the physical injuries alone, the pain of all the things that are said, and the loneliness that you feel when you're left alone like that, the energy that a person can have in that context all stems from a very, very strong love of Allah, without which that's not possible. They gave their lives lovingly. They gave whatever they had lovingly for Allah. They were awliyaullah. That's what that term means. Wilaya of Allah, being a wali of Allah, is having this strong bond of friendship with Allah. Submission with love, submission stemming from love of Allah. That is a height of the climax of it, is Karbala and what they did. We need this, and we want to ask Ali Akbar salamullahi alayhi wa ruhi lahu al-fida to help us, to give us that. When we remember Ali Akbar in the context of Karbala, when we shed tears for him, that he helps us develop this feeling. He translates the love that we have toward him and redirects it to the source or the reference that he had love toward, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah to hasten the return of our Imam. We ask Allah to help us be his true and close companions. We ask Allah to help all those who are helping his cause, especially our ulama, our maraja, above all our leader. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us all of our sins, forgive our parents, our grandparents, our relatives, all believers, those who are alive, those who passed away. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant all of us and all believers worldwide our hajat, needs, requests, relieve all those who are suffering from hardships, difficulties, illnesses, and we ask Allah to relieve all the people of the world of the oppressions they're facing. Bin Nabiy wa alih, rahimallahu man qara al-Fatihata ma'as salawat.